And hello again, and with my Simpson painted, it's now time for me to move on and sort out the paintwork on this custom painted Davida Jet helmet, which I've already mentioned in a previous video. And to be fair, some of the artwork on it isn't too bad. I mean, that's not bad, is it really? But overall, it's really not what I wanted. So I'm going to have to strip it all down and respray it. And so to kick things off, I've been trying to ease off this plastic strip which runs along the base, and it's really on quite tight. The glue is very strong, but what I've done is I've heated it all up with a hairdryer to sort of soften the glue, and now I think it's just about ready to come off. And what you can see here is that the folks who custom sprayed this helmet for me originally didn't do a very thorough job, because they stopped just there. I guess because they couldn't be bothered to remove this rubber strip. And partly I kind of understand why, because you're worried about damaging it or it not going back on again too well, but I think with a bit of effort it is possible to get this thing off. It's actually quite difficult to do when I'm filming it, but I basically heated it up for quite a while and just teased it off bit by bit, and it will eventually come off. So that's what I'm doing today, and here it goes, coming off now. And this really has to come off, because otherwise how on earth am I going to get a decent finish around this edge? I don't know if you can see there, but you can see that the paint's quite rough there and already starting to chip a little bit because they didn't do it right the first time. And so this has to come off. So my next step is to spend, no doubt, quite a few hours carefully rubbing all this down, flattening it back and getting it ready for primer. And now that I'm ready to spray the helmet, I've brought it outside here where I've got a very bright light. And under that very bright light, hopefully you can see what I'm seeing here, and that is all this sort of mottled effect all over the lacquer. And it really shows up quite well now that I've gone over it with some wet and dry sandpaper. And that's the orange peel effect you often get with paint, and to get round that you should really cut it back once it's hardened off. And obviously the people who did this paint job for me some time ago didn't bother. And that's one more reason why I want to get rid of this paint job and do it all myself, and I think I can do better than that. And though this isn't a giant egg, this is my helmet, which has just been given a fresh coat of filler primer. And that done, it's now all ready for its first coat of gloss black paint. So here we go. And there's the first light coat done. I'll do 2 or 3 more heavier coats and then I should be happy with it. But of course, being black, I've kind of made a rod for my own back there, because black shows up every tiny flaw in the paintwork. But hopefully I've done a good job with the prep and it should look okay when it's done. But we'll see. And there's a second coat just done. And in that bright light I can see a few little bits of dust that have fallen on that paintwork. And so the next step is to let that paint harden off for a few hours, and then I'm going to very, very carefully take some fine sandpaper and gently go over that paintwork to get rid of those little bits of dust and hairs that might be in that paint. And then once that's done, I can give it one more coat of black, and then I'm done with the colour coat. And now here we are back in my spare bedroom, and this black paint went on quite well, and that's going to stay here for a few days to harden off. And as you can see, I've started to mark out and mask out the shapes I want to do for the graphics. But don't worry, all this stuff is not the final masking. This is just to help me work out where the centre of the helmet is and where the edges of the masking should be. And what I'm doing is trying to get a datum point where I can work out where the side strips are going to be. And so to do that, I've spent a lot of time getting this strip here central in the middle of the helmet, or at least as close as I can get it. And once I've done that, I can use a 1-inch wide masking tape as a kind of unit of measure to mark out where I want the edge of the strip to be. And as you can see here, I've had a delivery recently, and these are the proper masking tapes for doing stripes and pinstriping and so on. I've got 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch, and I'll use those to get me a really fine line where it needs to go. And one more thing, I have been forewarned to treat this stuff very, very delicately indeed. Apparently once it's opened, you should never lay it down on a flat surface, because the edges here can be quite sticky and you'll pick up any dust and hair and so on. And if that happens, you're never going to get it off. And when you use it on something like a helmet, that hair and dust that's on the very edge of the strip will ruin that sharp edge you want on the paintwork. And sure enough, this is very sticky on the edge. I mean, it's actually stuck to the backing card, see? So again, I have to treat this very carefully and not leave it face down anywhere where it might collect some dirt. Well, that started off quite well. I've got this side done. This line here went on quite well. It's pretty even. I was then putting the other side on when I was moving it around, I discovered it had lifted up a little bit of paint, which was somewhat of a surprise. It could have been because I was pressing down too much to hold it in place. Perhaps my nail went in there, or maybe the paint is just too soft. And so as you can see, things don't always go right the first time. And so I've had to rub back that little area of damage and respray it black. And now with the repair to the black paint done, I've been busy and I've masked everything off, and I've used the pinstriping to mark out the stripe that's going to go on top of the helmet like this. So now my next decision is what colour to do this stripe. I've got three choices. I've got gold, silver or red. And having thought about it, I think I'm going to go for gold. And so now with that gold paint dry, it's now time to see if all that effort has actually worked. And so here we go with the first one. Let's hope it doesn't chip and peel or have a problem. So far so good. Which is quite nerve-wracking, isn't it? But then again, it is just a bit of fun, so if it doesn't work first time, I can always go back and do it again. It's not cost me much money, just a few pounds in paint and a couple of hours of work. So, well, more than a couple of hours, but right, that's the first one done. We can now peel off this edge, and it looks like I've got a nice, well-defined edge there. I'm quite happy with that. So now we have the 3mm mask, and this is what I really want to get right. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm not sure how accurate this will be, but given it's all done by hand, by eye, by my eye at that, hopefully it's not too bad. Hey, that wasn't too bad, was it? Considering that was done just by yours truly doing it by eye, it's not too bad at all. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that, and now I can move on and do the other side. And now here's the critical one, the other 3mm pinstripe. Let's hope that comes off okay. And that's not too bad, is it? But so far so good. And I must say it wasn't quite as difficult or frustrating as I thought it would be. So I'll call that a success. And so having lined up this decal, I'm now going to try and peel off the backing paper and hopefully everything will go okay. I was a little bit unsure about the white with the gold, but the only alternative is black and gold, so that wouldn't really work with a gold background. So white it would have to be. And yeah, that's not looking too bad. That's it. I've managed to chip the paint just there, but I'll sort that out another day. Anyway, it's getting late now, and I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully it's pretty lined up. And so the next step is going to be to let this paint work fully harden off for a couple of days, and then I'm going to lacquer it. And now here we are after 2 coats of lacquer, and it's looking pretty good. I've got a decent shine there, but it still needs a few more coats of lacquer yet. So for now it's just going to sit here and harden off. So let's just push this out of the way for a moment, because I do have a slight problem, because I do have a little problem with this rubbing strip. You can see here it's been damaged as I tried to remove it. It was stuck on really tight, so it couldn't really be avoided. You can see there it's ripped. So I need to find a replacement for this stuff. And fortunately it's pretty easy to find, because it's the same stuff as used on cars, on car bodywork, on door panels and so on. And I got this from Amazon for something like £2.50 a metre. So that's pretty cheap, and there's a vast array of different sizes and widths and so on, so you should have no problem finding a suitable replacement. So this will go on the helmet once the lacquer's hardened off completely.